Attention marketers! Get ready to transform your advertising strategies with Big Eye's new 2024 national research study, Retail Revolution. This in-depth report explores the rapidly changing retail landscape. You'll find valuable consumer insights across key areas, including shopping behaviors, direct-to-consumer brands, sustainability, brand collaborations, retail advertising, influencer marketing, and AI. To download your free copy of Big Eye's Retail Revolution, go to bigeyeagency.com/retail-revolution. That's bigeyeagency.com/retail-revolution. Reshaped by technological advancements, new consumer preferences, and global events, Big Eye's Retail Revolution is your guide to the future of retail marketing and advertising. Join the Retail Revolution.
Coming up in this episode of In Clear Focus.
On the one camp, you have the marketeers. On the other camp, you have the privacy people. And when actually they get to talk to each other, they really come up with great ideas how they can innovatively come up with solutions that would be privacy compliant and allow creativity in the marketing field.
You're listening to In Clear Focus, fresh perspectives on marketing and advertising, produced weekly by Big Eye, a strategy-led full-service creative agency growing brands for clients globally. Hello, I'm your host, Adrian Tennant, Chief Strategy Officer. Thank you for joining us. Customer data has become invaluable for brands and retailers seeking to deliver personalized experiences and drive growth. However, with increasing data protection and privacy regulations, marketers face significant challenges in leveraging this data effectively and ethically. Implementing laws such as GDPR in the EU and the DPDI bill in the UK has reshaped how companies collect, process, and use customer information. As a result, marketers have to navigate a complex landscape of legal requirements while still striving to create meaningful connections with consumers. Our guest today is an expert on data protection and marketing with a track record of providing valuable insights on balancing these often competing demands. Dr. Sachiko Scheuing is the European Privacy Officer for Acxiom, part of IPG, and the co-chairwoman of the Federation of European Data and Marketing. With over 2 decades of experience in marketing and data science, Sachiko has been at the forefront of data protection practices in the advertising industry. In 2020, she was awarded the Data IQ Professor Derek Holder Lifetime Achievement Award for contributing to the data protection and advertising industries. Her new book, published by Kogan Page, is How to Use Customer Data, Navigating GDPR, DPDI, and a Future with Marketing AI. To discuss some of its key ideas, I'm delighted that Sachiko is joining us today from Frankfurt, Germany. Sachiko, welcome to In Clear Focus.
Thank you, Adrian, for the invitation. And thank you for pronouncing my name properly. It's a huge plus from my side.
Great. How to Use Customer Data is your first book. What inspired you to write it, and who is your target audience?
Well, you see, the book is actually written for marketeers and privacy professionals. And I may have a slight emphasis on SMEs, considering the fact that marketeers and privacy professionals in small and medium-sized organizations may have to take on a wider remit. By definition, people working in SMEs need to be a little bit more of a generalist than those in large corporations, I would say. And as of the motivation, well, can I say, I think this is the joy of uniting the two departments at client calls. So on the one camp, you have the marketeers. On the other camp, you have the privacy people. And when actually they get to talk to each other, they really come up with great ideas how they can innovatively come up with solutions that would be privacy compliant and allow creativity in the marketing field. And, I just wanted to spread the spirit of coming together, coming up with great solutions, great atmosphere, and by doing that, improving the privacy for everybody.
In the introduction to your book, you state that it aims to bridge the gap between marketers and privacy professionals. Sachiko, can you explain why this gap exists and why it's crucial to address it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one thing you do need to know is that in the privacy profession, unless you are in the credit rating or pharma and medical research sector, the emphasis is usually put on the HR data. So marketing, usually for like privacy persons, is like the thing on the side. It's one of those unimportant things. So maybe that's one aspect to this entire setup. And marketeers tend to shy away from reaching out to their privacy or data protection departments because they'll say no. Who was they going to talk to them? The privacy department actually sees marketeers in many cases just those troublemakers. They're just coming up with all sorts of these problems. So I think we need to work together to come up with a solution that works for both marketeers and the privacy department and minimize the risk to data protection. So this is the reason why I think to have like a nice bridge between the two parties is very, very, very important.
Got it. I love that. Marketers as troublemakers. You introduce the MaRCS protection check in the book. Can you explain what it is and how marketers can use it?
Sure. So MaRCS stands for the first Ma comes from maintain clean and accurate data files. So it's all about data hygiene. The next one, develop responsible. So the R is for responsible apps and websites. And the next one stands for consequences. Think of all possible consequences to your customers and your clients when you are, for instance, appending attributes to your customer records or creating new insights or whatever. And the last letter, S, stands for security, ensure data security. And I think before you actually talk to other people, it's always a good thing, isn't it? Like if you're going for a job interview, you prepare yourself. You try to take a look at the website of the company and find out how best to pitch yourself and so on. But it is exactly the same for going over to the other department, i.e., for your marketeers to go over to the privacy and legal department and start your conversation. The better you're prepared, the smoother the conversations goes. Because by anticipating what questions they're asking, you can already score like many, many points. And they'll be like, hey, that marketing person is a very nice person. I want to work with them much more, which is actually my underlying motivation of writing this book. I want these two organizations to become friends with each other.
In the book, you also discuss various legal grounds for using customer data in marketing. Can you explain the concept of legitimate interest and why it might be more flexible for marketers, especially those working on smaller brands?
Yes, I think it is important to know that in Europe, we don't use the word opt-out consent, right? Consent is always and only opt-in. So legitimate interest is an opt-out consent in Europe. That's an opt-out consent as you use it in the United States would be considered legitimate interest. And legitimate is as opposed to illegitimate or illegal. So first of all, if you are using the legal ground, the legitimate interest, it has to be something legal. And then the next criteria is that you need to make sure that interest does not weigh heavier than that of the data subjects. So this is usually referred to as like a balancing test. Balance your interest against the data subject's interest and then make sure that your interest is weighing more because then you are allowed to use the data. And also, Adrian, unlike consent, which is basically, you go through this okay clicking exercise every day so many times, but it actually puts the responsibility to the person who's clicking okay, i.e. the consumer or the client. Legitimate interest actually puts the responsibility squarely with the organization, the company. So it actually makes you as marketer or you as the company be responsible about what you do with the data, how you treat the data. It really increases the accountability of the company. And I think that is a good thing because you know what you are going to do with the data to the smallest detail. You might as well also assume the responsibility because I think that would actually make so much more sense. Also, consent, as in opt-in consent in the US term, it has to be specific under the GDPR. So it is not suitable for the data collected using opt-in to be recycled. There's really no flexibility. But legitimate interest, on the other hand, can generally be recycled for other purposes. So you see, it increases the value of your data altogether if you're collecting data based on legitimate interest. I hope that makes sense. It's a really, really like, nitty gritty, jargony stuff that I'm talking about right here.
It does. Your book covers both GDPR and the DPDI bill. Can you explain the key differences between these regulations and US data protection laws?
Sure. I mean, to start with, about the DPDI, oh, what a problem. Because after everything got finalized towards the beginning of this year, well, UK decided to actually drop the DPDI because they decided to have a general election. So, DPDI is no longer there. But having said that, I think the Brits have done a great job because they are in this privileged situation where they have experienced, implemented, lived GDPR for 6 years, and they were able to actually use the learnings that they have accumulated and use that knowledge to improve the GDPR. And that was what DPDI bill was all about. I bet it is going to come back. However, some of the thinkings, like reducing administrative burden, particularly to like small and medium-sized companies, and also the legislators have found that it is very important to strengthen the use of what we have just spoken about, the legitimate interest or opt-out consent for marketing purposes. So that would have given marketeers more legal certainty. But anyways, this is to be seen how written would evolve. Now back to the GDPR and the difference between GDPR and US privacy laws. Well, first of all, I think it is important to clarify that GDPR is a general law. So that means it applies to all industry sectors. It's not industry specific. Secondly, this may be a key difference because GDPR covers personal data outside of persons in his or her private capacity. Like, for instance, my information as the European Privacy Officer of Acxiom would be considered, or data related to that, on that GDPR would be applicable. So I think these may be the two key differences.
You dedicate a chapter to working with partners and suppliers. Sachiko, what are the most important aspects smaller independent agencies or brands should consider when collaborating with larger partners on data-related projects?
Yeah, very good question again. So I'll try to sum it up what the agencies and so on can do. I think the most important thing is to button up on compliance. You see, you need to also take a look at the situation from the larger partner or the larger customer's point of view. You see, of course, working with them would give you a huge lift on your revenue, but you also need to understand that it would also require a higher level of compliance because the larger companies are themselves under more scrutiny. And also buttoning up in the sense of getting certified and things like that would be really useful. Once again, from the perspective of these larger companies, of course, they will be sending you auditors and so on, right? But it costs money. Auditors cost money, it costs time, it takes effort. If you can go to these companies and say, hey, I am this and that certified, then, the business partners would be like, oh, well, that's cool. Then we'll take it to that external independent organization has said you're all right, so it must be all right. Next. And so you are doing like a great favor. Therefore, I would conclude buttoning up maybe and being certified may be a great way to actually take advantage of the situation should you need to be in a competitive situation with other companies that are offering the same services.
You've mentioned certifications. Which of the principal bodies agencies or brands should think about certifying with here in the US?
Generally speaking, the ISO 27001 is highly regarded. Anything that can actually provide an indication that your data is physically safe, like data in your hands would be physically safe, would be very much appreciated.
Thank you. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back after this message.
I am Sachiko Scheuing, the author of How to Use Customer Data, Navigating GDPR, DPDI, and a Future with Marketing AI. My book provides a practical and user-friendly guide to ensure your data-driven marketing complies with GDPR and other regulations. I break down key concepts and explain how to balance customers' privacy concerns with the latest innovation in data-driven marketing. As an InClear Focus listener, you can save 25% on how to use customer data when you order directly from my publisher at koganpage.com by entering the exclusive promo code BIGEYE25 at checkout. Shipping is always complimentary for customers in the US and the UK. I hope my book helps you navigate the complex world of data-driven marketing while building customer trust for sustainable long-term value. Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Sachiko Scheuing, Acxiom's European Privacy Officer and the author of How to Use Customer Data. For Big Eye's recent research study, Retail Revolution, we surveyed over 1,400 US consumers aged 18 to 76. 94% of all respondents expressed some level of concern about the privacy of their data when used for personalized advertising. Only 6% said they were not concerned at all. Sachiko, what are some cost-effective ways for small and medium-sized brands to implement robust data security measures?
First of all, let's talk about the security measures. Protecting data is like a must, right? The good thing is, the robustness of the technical and organizational measure that you need to adopt depends on the risk that your data is carrying or the processing that you are carrying out. Meaning, if you're dealing with information that relates to permitting somebody to come into the country or prosecuting somebody or medical details before operating this person, whatever, of course, these data must be protected with utmost care, and you need to actually invest so much more in the protection. But if it is about names, addresses, let's say pseudonymized information, as in key-coded or encrypted information or whatever, then of course the level of security measures that you need to adopt would be not much less. So that's the part one, security. And then you have the second element. I think the second part of your question relates to communication. And I'll quote another survey, a 2022 survey by GDMA or Global DMA found out that 48% of US respondents are so-called pragmatists, meaning if that person sees value in what they're getting in exchange of data, like for instance, you will have access to information about how to build a birdhouse, or if you would actually have access to a certain article, then they'll be happily sharing their data with you. Compounding that with the security point. And I think when you are sharing data, you do want to know that it's not going to end up getting into trouble because the data at that company has been stolen or something like that. So I would say if you are actually having a robust security system anyways, then tell those people. I like to quote this Muhammad Ali story. Apparently, he has said, 50% of the time I'm training so hard. Look at my muscle and all the rest. And then you know what I'm doing the other 50% of the time? I'm telling people that I'm training all the time. Well, this is exactly what we have to do. And here, you see, that's why marketeers are very important for privacy people, for your organization, because you need to tell people that you have a great security measure put in place, of course, in an appropriate place. So most probably that is going to be on the privacy statement or somewhere like that. And also, if you're already communicating, you might as well also talk about what value the sharing of the data is going to be exchanged with the consumer or with the customer.
Great points. Your book also includes a chapter on AI and marketing. Can you briefly explain the EU AI Act and its potential impact on marketers?
Yes, this is my recent favorite topic, so I can actually go on for hours and hours, but I'll try to make it short. The EU AI Act is the world's first AI law, as you know. And the nice thing about this law is that it is written with global interoperability in mind, meaning already from the outset, the legislator said they want to make sure that if there are other AI laws in other countries, that it would actually take a similar position and hence would be no contradiction between the two laws or several laws. And you can, for instance, see from the fact that the EU AI Act makes use of the OECD definition on AI, which also appears in Biden's executive order from October last year. So I think there they did a really good job in already starting with this interoperability in mind. And then it is also important to understand that it's a very, very different type of law compared to the GDPR. It actually is a product safety law, right? So that means if the AI or the results of using the AI is going to be used in the EU, then it would also apply to companies in the US or other non-EU countries like Britain is at the moment. In the EU, whenever we actually have a product, it carries the CE mark, which basically means it's certified for some EU standard. Well, same thing, a manufacturer is in China, they still need to comply with the EU law, in this case, EU AI Act. A big thing that I think should be understood by marketeers, or it should be a relief to marketeers, is the fact that this law, it basically takes a risk-based approach, meaning the higher the risk, the stricter the rules, the lower the risk, the more flexible you are. And it basically defines what types of AIs are forbidden and what is high risk AI. And things that do not fall under forbidden, forbidden is forbidden, or high risk, you are free to use. Whereas, perhaps transparency is one of the only things that you need to think about. When using a chatbot, for instance, you need to make sure that people understand that they're interacting with a machine and not a person. This is to combat deep fake, I suppose. When you actually have videos or images that are creating using AI, then it should be, made clear upfront. I think that is going to be like the space that we need to look at. Like, how will this transparency be given in a most effective way? Like nutrition labels and things like that. So, anyways, the aim of the legislator here is very clear to me. I think they are saying, go and innovate with AI. And therefore, I think we should really embrace the numerous marketing AIs that are entering the market and started to be adopted by so many marketeers around Europe and all over the world, really.
Great. In How to Use Customer Data, you discuss the role of data protection officers, or DPOs, in organizations. How can marketers and DPOs work together effectively to create a more privacy-friendly organization?
Yes, well, the reason why I actually spoke about this in my book is because for marketeers, some departments are like natural partners, like finance, because you need to make sure that you get your budget allocated properly and stuff like that. Sales department, particularly in the B2B sector, marketing is like a sales enabler. So you really, really work closely. But once it comes to data protection or privacy, I think marketeers really need to consciously reach out to the privacy department and go and work with them. Same thing can be said to privacy professionals as well. So the data protection department really need to reach out to marketeers and understand what great values marketeers can actually bring to the privacy organization. There's one reason why I really think it is important for privacy people, DPOs in particular, to work closely with marketing. And that is because, in my view, like there are several prerequisites to be a DPO. Some of them are like legal knowledge and stuff like that. They're listed in the law itself. But from my point of view, when I take a look at the tasks of a DPO is an advisor, it's a trainer, it's a contact person for all privacy related queries, and this person is a team player. All these things, what these things have in common is that this means communication skills as well as interpersonal skills make a huge difference to that organization so that company can become a robust, privacy friendly organization. And so, noticing that, I thought I really should dedicate a chapter on the DPO. And in that chapter, you would read there are so many things about what communication tools DPOs can use to actually excel in their communication.
Got it. Finally, what advice would you give to marketers or brand managers listening to this podcast who want to ensure they use customer data effectively and ethically?
I would say, first of all, go through the MaRCS protection check, which I suggest in your mind. And then once you actually think about the product or the tools that you want to use or the concept that you want to deploy is put through the MaRCS protection check, I think you're then ready to go and see your privacy department or data protection department. Sometimes when you're working with a very structured organization, they may actually have a specific interface on the intranet or a particular chat channel that you can use to actually reach out to the privacy team. Anyways, after you do that, start a conversation with them. Explain to them what you're up to, what you want to do, and solicit their opinion and get into a dialogue. And then maybe privacy people would feel like, hey, you know what? Actually, I can think of a better solution because GDPR article this and this has got this exception, or GDPR in combination with the e-privacy directive would mean that they have to put this mechanism when they're actually building up the solution or this interface. So get into a conversation. And I think that is the start. When you actually go through many projects, go through many discussions, then there would be the rapport that you need that would really help you work closely together. And then you can get into your fancy stuff like DPOs, working together with the marketing department. Maybe there is even an internal communication specialist that would help them, for instance, amplify their message within the company. So these are my very general thoughts. Sorry, it's very chaotic. These are my thinkings.
Well, thank you for taking a very complex topic and making it understandable for the rest of us. Sachiko, if listeners would like to learn more about your work at Acxiom or your book, How to Use Customer Data, what's the best way to do so?
I think you can either go to my employer Acxiom's website, www.acxiom.com, and there's a contact form. I'm sure they will forward it over to me. The other way is, of course, you could always reach out to me via LinkedIn.
And a reminder that you can save 25% on how to use customer data when you order directly from koganpage.com. Just use the promo code BIGEYE25 at checkout. Sachiko, thank you very much for being our guest on In Clear Focus.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thanks to my guest this week, Sachiko Scheuing, the author of How to Use Customer Data. As always, you'll find a complete transcript of our conversation with timestamps and links to the resources we discussed on the In Clear Focus page at bigeyeagency.com. Just select Insights from the menu. Thank you for listening to In Clear Focus, produced by Big Eye. I've been your host, Adrian Tennant. Until next week, goodbye.